You're tuned in to the Daily BS.
Do you believe it?
Sports and culture combined into one.
Michael on the drive across the lane. Turnaround shot. Got it. 63 for Jordan.
Are you kidding me? He did what?
The Daily BS begins
Bazinga!
right now.
Right. Googly moogly.
Hadouken!
Hey, this promises to be fun.
Can't wait.
Well, good afternoon, folks. Brian Snow is here and with you, and we're ready to get down to some daily BS business, sports and culture combined into one. You can hear a replay of this show 1 hour after its completion, and the premiere of the Daily BS podcast will also be available 1 hour after this show's completion. We are on all kinds of networks and stations all across the country. Well, let me use my normal phrase, in the region, across the nation, and around the world. So if you're in your car on the drive home and you got me via your phone, via your laptop, via whatever, welcome to the Daily BS, and let old Brian take you home with some great sports and culture talk. All right, enough introductions. Let's get started. Well. It seems like the NCAA is finally letting athletes earn money. Where was this thought years and years ago, considering, well, since 1980, since I started watching, when some of the most legendary players passed through their portals? To help me figure this out is Cole Johnson. He joins me right now. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. CJ just recently celebrated a birthday, and I figured no other way to celebrate a birthday than to talk some hoops with this man. Let's take a look at some of the Hall of Famers that have skipped the NCAA and found their way into the NBA. And I'm going back to the 70s with a fellow that you're very familiar with that graced the Houston Rockets uniform, Moses Malone.
Yes, one of the, and I mean on a short list, greatest high school to pros player.
Yep.
That ever existed in NBA history.
Yep. And someone else that's on that short list, Kevin Garnett.
Mm-hmm.
Because no one thought he'd be ready for the NBA when he appeared in 1995, and he certainly was. He had a wonderful career, and some of the players that have skipped college altogether and the money they've made in the NBA. And an article came out, and this is what we're going to touch on. An article came out saying the NCAA is finally taking steps to let the athletes earn a living while they earn an education. And my simple question is this, as I give you the floor: what took them so long?
You know, when the money gets to be real good, and you don't want to think about seeing some of that revenue that you pull in leave. Mm-hmm. I really believe the NCAA was basically sort of in that way. It was like, man, we're making money hand over fist, and we shouldn't give this up to the athletes. And then on top of it, you know, they almost now, not as much now, but still at times I hear it, that they spot we're the paragon of amateur athletics. Really. So the NCAA is amateur athleticism at its finest. Really? Okay. So not even in the sport of basketball. I mean, you just look at football. I mean,
yeah.
You pay, these bowls pay the, not necessarily the NCAA itself, because I know the NCAA makes money, but they pay the schools who represent the program.
Yep.
Millions of dollars just to make an appearance there.
Yeah.
And that's just football with the bowl. We're not even talking about the NCAA March Madness tournament, which I know garners, and I'm thinking I'm being conservative when I say this, $1 billion when they do it.
Yep.
Every March.
Do you know how much money Atlanta lost out on because they were the scheduled host of
this year,
of the Final Four this year. And not just the fact that it's in Atlanta, it's in a brand new stadium, Mercedes-Benz Stadium in downtown Atlanta. The city of Atlanta, the workers they had planned to hire, lost billions. And yes, I'm saying this correctly, and I'm pluralizing this correctly. They lost billions this year with the coronavirus pandemic. But let's go a little further. How many billions have the host cities of Final Fours in the past lost when the NCAA doesn't give up a little chunk of that money, especially since they've been going to seats that seat at least 70,000 fans?
Yes. Yeah, you think about that. 70,000 seats, 3 games.
Yeah.
That's just the Final Four portion of March Madness.
Yeah. That's just the Final
That's just
Four.
the Final Four.
Yep. and imagine how much money was lost just in let's go small with the first four. That's always in Dayton, Ohio, at UD Arena, a beautiful facility that I had a chance to see. UD Arena is a beautiful facility, brings in millions of bucks every year. They host the first four. So if you take the fact that millions of bucks come into Dayton, Ohio, folks, for the first four, to the billions they lost throughout the tournament and the Final Four in Atlanta, I think the NCAA decided it was beyond time that we let the athletes earn a little bit of a living. And I think what also prompted this is Dasheen Nix decommitting from UCLA to join the G League, and instead of just an education, he's getting $300,000 up front to do what he loves to do.
And I don't care how old you are, but double especially at 18. If at 18 you get a chance to have $300,000 paid up front to do what you love,
they'll take it. They'll snatch that in
go
a
ahead
heartbeat.
and take it.
Yes.
And if I was a parent of the 18-year-old, I'd say, you know what? I want you to go to school. I want you to get your education, but $300 girl?
Sick 'em.
That's how much you're paying your
Sick
friend?
'em.
Sign that contract now, please, sir.
Yes.
Sign it now.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what the NCAA has to compete against. You're having these 18 and 19-year-olds who they're saying, I don't want to, let's be completely forthright. I don't want to take money under the table and have the fear of being investigated for reasons beyond compare. Because the scholarship that I am getting is not paying enough.
And it really wasn't. And it really wasn't. From the time you and I have been watching college hoops, and it covers a while. As a matter of fact, let me bring a couple of teams from the 90s that made the NCAA, especially basketball, a ton of money with their appearance in the tournament and their television games throughout the season. Let's go back to 1990. You got the Running Rebels of UNLV, and then 2 years after that, you have the Fab Five out of Michigan. You want to tell me they didn't make the NCAA a ton of money?
And let's talk about the team in between those. Even though they didn't really get as much pub in 1991, but the Duke team,
Duke Blue Devils.
I mean, they were covered. I mean, they were basically like rock stars themselves. They were covered like we were seeing the Bulls were covered later on that decade.
Yes,
people were all about what Krzyzewski and Leitner and Hill were about. I'm thinking these are only 20 and 21-year-olds. I mean,
right?
Wow, they're not even in the pros yet. And you mean to tell me the focus, attention that team got, the Running Rebels? God, I love that team. The attention they got, and you know the Fab Five, the attention they got because
my God,
they revolutionized all of college basketball just by their presence alone. Not even talking about the back-to-back.
Yes.
Just their presence alone revolutionized college basketball. You may tell me that the NCAA, which made a boatload of money with all three of those programs, could have said, you know what, thank you for the front of the jersey thank you for making the front of the jersey profitable. You know what, we're going to make the back of the jersey profitable for you. You mean somebody the NCAA did not make enough money that they could kick it back to the students?
They could have easily kicked it back. They could have easily kicked it back to the students. Again, I go back to 1990. The Running Rebels ran the table, demolished Duke in the championship game. And remember, this was held in arenas, okay? This is when the NCAA tournament was held in NBA arenas where they can slip 17, 18,000 people. But then you go to 91, that same squad, Nevada, Las Vegas, in Indianapolis, in the Hoosier Dome? You mean to tell me Indianapolis didn't make a ton of money? Miss me with that. And now you got Lucas Oil Stadium. Billions of bucks in downtown Indianapolis for a 72-hour stay, which takes a year out to plan, and I know this. I've spoken to a lot of representatives in Indianapolis and just across the NCAA that have gotten in touch with me saying, hey, look, let's educate you on how this process actually works. And when they gave me that education with the media coverage that happens in all these big stadiums, man alive. I mean, just from I've seen a couple of stations in Indy just televise or do quick 2-minute reports on them laying the floor down at Lucas Oil Stadium, or before that, the Hoosier Dome. Let's go back to the Running Rebels in 1990. Augman, Larry Johnson, Anderson Hunt, David Butler, Greg Anthony. That's the name I'm missing. They made the NCAA men's basketball as a whole a ton of money. And then you have one of my favorite coaches of all time, Jerry Tarkanian, the leader of the leader of those rock stars. He gave these kids a chance to shine. And when they played Loyola Marymount in 1990, and I'll get to Loyola Marymount in just a second. When they played Loyola Marymount in Oakland, California for the West Regional title, every eye in the nation was glued on that game. The underdogs from Loyola Marymount versus the high-scoring stars of UNLV. You know how much money those schools could have made off of that game alone?
Yeah, and that was an Elite Eight game.
Yes. Yes. That wasn't even the Final Four in Denver. That was just an Elite Eight game. You know how much money they could have put into Northern California with that game alone? And this was 1990. Yeah. This was 1990. We're talking 30 years ago. Man. And look, the NBA was in high gear around 1990. Lord, was it ever?
To have the NCAA take a good chunk out of the popularity of the NBA, that should tell you something. That should tell you how big of a money-driving business, and yes, I'll say it, money-driving business college basketball became then.
Yep.
Forget 30 years later, that's where we're living now. It truly is a business, and if we were to not say it, we would be hypocrites.
Yeah, big time.
But it was a big time business then.
Yes, it was.
And we were seeing that.
I'll give you one of the best examples of a national championship game that, if you think about it, given the time, was undersold. How about March 29th, 1982? Why do I say it was Why do I say it was undersold? Why do I say it was undersold? Folks, listen to me carefully. You know where that championship game was held? In case you don't remember, New Orleans.
Yep. And not just New Orleans, the Superdome.
The Louisiana Superdome. 62,000 folks. 62,000, and they opened the whole place.
Whole stadium.
They opened the whole place. Come on now. Michael Jordan, a freshman, hits a game winner in front of not just 62,000 people, but everyone who was watching on network television at the time. And that was when CBS had the NCAA. God, I miss that so much.
Mm-hmm.
That was
well, they have it now, but they share the wealth, so to speak. But yeah.
But if they could have shared should have shared the wealth then. Should have shared the wealth. Let's be real, okay? You know how many future Hall of Famers were in that game? Patrick Ewing, Michael Jordan, James Worthy.
It's Worthy.
Okay.
Oh my God.
You know how many?
Not to mention the Hall of Fame coaches,
Dean Smith and John Thompson. Okay, I think it was 82, and that's when I really first started getting into it. 82 was when I thought the NCAA was put on the map. But then 30 years later to find out that game was undersold big time.
Mm-hmm. It was.
It was undersold. It was undersold, man. And even that game made millions of dollars. Made the networks millions of dollars. 1982, March 29th, 1982. How many millions were exchanged between CBS and the NCAA, and how many hundreds of thousands were kicked back to the schools? Something wrong with this picture.
Mm-hmm. And the players get nothing. And that,
not a thing.
That's what I'm talking about. The hard sweat of these 18, 19, 20, and 21-year-olds. Not the deans of the school, not the executives of the school, not the NCAA executives. These young men and women.
Yes.
They're sweating their butts off and they're getting nothing.
They're getting nothing.
And you're saying to them, well, your reward is you get to go to school for free. Really? You're just going to make them get up and do these practices, and do the practice as soon as school opens up. I'm talking about August.
Yes,
and
July in some cases.
In July in some cases.
Shall we mention the SEC or the Big Ten?
Right, and you can't tell me that when their seasons are over, that means they don't practice at all. No, because. For football, that's false because they hold spring practices with football.
Yep.
So when you have basketball, their season doesn't end in March. Their season ends when they walk across the stage in May.
Yep.
So, so you're saying they should give up at least 3 to 4 hours every day, sometimes 6. I would dare say sometimes 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
From August to May. And you're saying to them, yeah, and by the way, you won't play unless you get at least a C average. Hopefully you would make us look better if you get a B average.
Yep.
And you definitely make us look great if it's an A.
Mm-hmm.
So, study your butt off, practice 3-4 hours a day, and for your reward, an attaboy or attagirl. Get out of here, man.
With the way things are now, I would not be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the trend hits women's basketball as well. This is what pisses me off about the WNBA. Okay? It's being backed supposedly by the NBA. Of course, the WNBA was founded in 1997. Remember the Houston Comets, y'all?
Yeah. And I missed them.
Remember the Houston Comets, y'all? And shared space at, what's that place called? The Summit?
The Summit.
Yes, the Summit. Why has it, and I'm going to put this out there, and I'm making no disclaimers. I'm just going to ask a flat out have been answered. Not just asked, but answered a long time ago. I've said many times on this show, and you've written shotgun with me, I love women's basketball. I absolutely adore women's basketball, and I have since the first women's Final Four that I watched on CBS with, oh, here's a Texan that was a CBS household name. Frank Gleber was voicing the women's Final Four. Did I go there?
Man, he was good too. Underrated play-to-play guy. Oh, man.
Frank Gleber was voicing the women's Final Four. Not to mention the fact he had NBA duties also, folks.
Yes, he did. Yes, he
Not
did.
to mention he had NBA duties also. And the first women's Final Four was held at the Scope Coliseum in Norfolk, Virginia.
Norfolk, Virginia. Mm.
Why hasn't the women's NCAA played in a big stadium yet? The reason I keep getting is that they won't sell it out. I think that would be right. Listen, the biggest stadium. Memory may jolt me on this one. Biggest stadium I've seen them play in was Tropicana Field in St. Pete. They've always been in arenas. If the men could put 70,000 in a stadium for a Final Four, why can't the women put 40,000 in a stadium for a Final Four? I mean, let's really go there. They had these, I want to say about a decade back, they had some challenge games in Phoenix, Arizona, outside. The roof was open at University of Phoenix Stadium, it was called at the time. They played outside and no seat to be had in the house. If you can do that in November, why the hell can't they do that in March and give these women the same kind of love that the men get? You mean to tell me you can't put 70,000 people in Phoenix, Arizona?
All right, and to give you a perspective, University of Phoenix Stadium. Here's the perspective. Super Bowls can only be hosted in stadiums that hold at least 72,000 people in it.
Yep.
72,000 seated people in it.
Yep.
So if Super Bowls, and many have been played there already, if
Yes.
Super Bowls can be played there, you mean to tell me that a women's Final Four couldn't pack that out too?
Do you know
72,000? You mean to tell me there's not 72,000, forget college, just
Yes.
72,000 women basketball fans wouldn't pack a stadium like that?
in a heartbeat they would? And you and I both know some hardcore women's basketball fans, men and women. Men and women.
Yes.
I covered the Chicago Sky for their first 6 years. The Chicago Sky for their first 6 years. And the year they got to the WNBA Finals, 2014, they had to play it at the Pavilion due to a scheduling conflict. Not a seat in the house. For the two home
Not
games,
surprised.
for the one home game, I beg your pardon, that the Chicago Sky hosted the Phoenix Mercury, not a seat in the house. Miss me with that. And the UIC
Probably
Pavilion was
turned people away.
and the UIC Pavilion used to have hockey. The UIC Pavilion had college hockey. Okay? And here's something else that really really gets on my nerve. Okay? Indianapolis has hosted a women's Final Four a couple of times. And I'm venturing to guess that it could be due to a scheduling conflict. But why hasn't it graced Chicago? Why are they afraid to grace Chicago?
I think now, this is what's going to suck. I think now it will bypass Chicago because seemingly NCAA is solidly looking for indoor football stadiums to host the Final Four.
Yeah.
And it's messed up that it's messed up you have that type of criteria because you're going to miss a whole lot of cities, which would be great hotbeds for Final Fours.
Yep.
New York can't host one.
Nope.
LA before
and New Jersey
this
hosted
year
and New Jersey hosted a Super Bowl. New Jersey hosted a Super Bowl, folks.
New hosted an outdoor Super Bowl. Yeah. And me, I personally would love to see them try an outdoor Final Four.
Yes.
I would love to see them try to do it.
Along the shores of Lake Michigan. Along the shores
Right.
of Lake Michigan. Do you know what Chicago would rake in the bucks if the Final Four was ever hosted in Chicago, men or women? Because you can easily put 22,000 in the United Center for a women's basketball game. You could easily put 22,000 people in the United Center. So I think the NCAA, the women's NCAA tournament, the Final Four should be held in places that hold at least 20,000 people, especially with the way stadiums are popping up nowadays. When the Bulls were having their bull run, the second three-peat, the capacity at the United Center, let me throw some attendance numbers out here, folks. The capacity at the United Center is 21,711. Every finals home game in the second three-peat at the United Center drew, wait for it, 24,000. 24,000 plus every home game during the NBA playoffs. Forget the finals. 96 and 98.
I bet it wasn't just the finals.
Forget the finals. Every home game, every home playoff game that the Bulls hosted in the United Center had 24,000 in it. You mean to tell me you can't put 24,000 people in there for a women's Final Four? Miss me with that.
Yeah. Now for the women's Final Four, since they're be blunt, since they're lacking the balls to put the women in stadiums.
Yep.
Yeah, there is no excuse, no reason, no rationale that would be explainable enough to not have Chicago host at least a women's Final Four.
Yes. I mean, regional finals I've seen in person. Big Ten tournaments I've seen in person. Hell, I did a high school game in 2000 that drew 20,000 for a high school game. 20,002. I was on the call for that game. You mean to tell me you can't put 20,000 in there for a women's Final Four? Baloney. I ain't buying it.
And that's the thing that I think they're missing is all these hotbeds that you could have Final Fours in. New York, for example.
Yes.
I mean, LA for another example. I mean, these places can easily and not even blink host events such as this without even halfway trying. Chicago is in that mix where you can throw, especially if it's sports, you can do anything sporting event-wise.
In Chicago.
You got almost 10 million people in that area that live there. So you mean to tell me that Chicago, as rabid of a sports scene as it is, and the NCAA knows this because Indianapolis is not that far from Chicago.
Nope.
And you don't have them host anything there?
And where's the Big Ten headquarters? Downtown Chicago.
In downtown Chicago.
Downtown Chicago. The Big Ten headquarters is in downtown Chicago. If it's supposed to, let's put this out there since we're throwing people want to call these conspiracies. No, these are actual questions. If you want to say the Big Ten is a college conference, and it is, why is it in downtown Chicago? Why is it on the campus? Why aren't these the Southwest Conference held their conference tournament at Reunion Arena in Dallas
every
year, and not a seat to be had in the house in Reunion Arena? The Chicago Blackhawks put on a winter classic. It was a winter classic held at Wrigley Field, and then they held a Stadium Series game at Soldier Field. Listen to the scope of this, folks, and there's a reason I'm making this kind of comparison, especially for my hometown. You know doggone well you could host a women's Final Four in Chicago, and Chicagoans will eat it up.
You don't even have to try hard.
Nope. And you got the largest African-American high school basketball association in the country, the Chicago Public League. You mean to tell me those girls won't eat up a women's Final Four?
And the fact that the NCAA seems to hit this groove of, okay, let's go to Atlanta, let's go to Houston, let's go to Indianapolis. Not throwing shade on any of those cities whatsoever.
Right.
Lived in Houston, so I have love for Houston. Drive through Atlanta on an annual basis.
Yep.
Love Atlanta.
Yes.
Indianapolis. Man, I mean, basketball is such a huge, important aspect of that whole state.
It's a religion. That's the only way I can put it. That's the only way I can put it. My wife and I have talked about it a dozen, 100 times. Basketball is a religion from high school to NCAA to pro. It's a religion in the state of Indiana.
Right.
Basketball is a religion in the city of Indianapolis.
Right. So I get why they want to continue to host those events there. Fine, cool, no problem with that. But you can't exclude these other cities that can do it upright.
Yes.
Yeah, and New Orleans, of course, is in that mix too. And I was born in New Orleans.
Right.
I mean, you can't exclude. You can't exclude Chicago. You can't exclude even Denver.
No.
No,
you can't. And Denver hasn't hosted a Final Four since 1990, since the Running Rebs were crowned champions. Denver, Philadelphia.
You can't exclude Philly. You can't exclude Boston. You can't exclude D.C. But that's what's happening. And I'm like, why? That doesn't make sense.
Let's go to one place that hasn't hosted a Final Four in ages, and it'll be a perfect place for the women to kick off a Final Four in a big place. Seattle.
I would love that.
Seattle needs a women's Final Four.
I would so love that. I would so love that.
Just to take in the scenery. And you want to talk about a basketball haven? Seattle, Washington.
That's one. Slept on. I mean, Rip Van Winkle.
Yes.
That whole city is slept on.
It is,
for
man.
Basketball richness and history. Slept on for the fandom they have there. Slept on for the history and traditions that they have had because a Final Four was hosted there.
1995.
And actually, multiple ones have.
Yes.
So
yes, indeed.
So you can't tell me that you have eyes only for stadiums that have roofs on them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, basketball arenas can hold the men's Final Four. Man, please. I mean, this is a prime example of cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Right.
And this is what I was saying earlier. The revenue gets so good to these people, man. They don't want to give that up.
Nope.
And so they limit themselves and saying, okay, well, we can only go in places like, well, now they can go to L.A. because they have a big time dome stadium now there. But I mean, the only place they could go is L.A. now, Phoenix, Houston, Atlanta, New Orleans, Indianapolis. I mean, come on. You mean to tell me Miami can't host one? You mean to tell me Charlotte can't host one? And you live in the state now.
Yes, I do.
You want to talk about basketball being a religion, which it is in Indiana. I live in North Carolina. I know people walk, talk, live, breathe, sleep, talk trash about, and think almost only about basketball in North Carolina.
I got down here. I mean, my wife and I got down here, and I wasn't even here a month, and I'm talking to people about the ACC, men's and women's basketball. And believe me, I got my hat in the ring to cover some women's basketball here in Carolina. Matter of fact, there's a young lady by the name of Ace Koenig, graduated from North Carolina State. I had her on the program. Y'all will hear that interview in its entirety. And I know I've had her on, and people have heard the interview, but I'm going to play it again after this segment concludes because people need to really start getting in and feeling women's basketball. And I will be one of the biggest supporters for it until I go 6 feet under. But speaking of Final Four dates, places, okay, any of these places sound familiar? Lucas Oil Stadium, Mercedes-Benz Superdome, NRG Stadium, State Farm Stadium, Alamo Dome. There you go. Lucas Oil Stadium. So Indy gets it twice with Lucas Oil Stadium, which is a wonderful facility. I'm not going to sell Lucas Oil Stadium short because I've seen football and basketball in Lucas Oil Stadium. Matter of fact, called 3 football games at Lucas Oil Stadium. Let's a little time on stadiums here while I got Cole Johnson on the phone. The first time I ever saw Lucas Oil Stadium, it was being built in 2006. And I said to myself, I would love the opportunity to call a football game there or call a game there, period. 8 years later, October 2014, I got my wish and called the Circle City Classic with 30,000 people in attendance at Lucas Oil Stadium. You ever go into a place, sports-wise, and you're just in a pleasurable form taken aback by the surrounding?
It's funny you say that because the very first time I got a chance to go into NRG Stadium in Houston, and that stadium was started to be built in 1999. It completed in 2002. When I got into that stadium, and I visited the Astrodome, God knows how many times. I've lost count how many times I went to that stadium. I walking into the facility, I was like, wow, this is impressive. And I tailgated there too. So tailgating was great. Walking into the facility was fine. Once I got, not even to my seat, but once I got outside of the corridors and started to approach my seat, I looked and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a gorgeous facility.
Yes.
And I never felt that way about the Astrodome. Love the place though, but I never felt that way about the Astrodome. But I did about the NRG Stadium. I'm like, wow, this is a nice looking place. Yeah. That's exactly how I felt when I first saw that.
You get the point.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And when I got to Lucas Oil Stadium, and so many, I got to throw this in there, and I'm throwing shade at a few certain people who said I'd never make the big time, and then they saw pictures of me. Yeah, you know where I'm going. And then they saw pictures of me in Lucas Oil Stadium in the booth. I'm sitting in the booth at Lucas Oil Stadium, suited and booted, ready to call the Circle City Classic between Kentucky State and Central State. And I've done it 3 times. I've done it 3 times. And people say I wouldn't get there once. I've done it 3 times. Like you said, oops. I've conquered Soldier Field. I've conquered Lucas Oil Stadium. Done Bankers Life Fieldhouse twice.
Oh, I bet that's a nice facility.
Oh my gosh. State championships for Marquette Catholic 2014 and 15. It was an early wake-up call, but it was worth it.
Man, people should tell you that you can do something more often.
Oh, they still do. A few certain people whom I've shared with you do it. They still do it to this day. Let's see. Where else about Welsh Ryan Arena, Northwestern University, call games for Chicago State for 10 years, which is Division I, by the way. Let's see. Did Central State football and basketball for a year outside of Dayton, Ohio. That's an HBCU, by the way, folks. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Recently, Spectrum Center, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh. Spectrum Center.
Yep.
For an NBA game.
Yeah.
Not high school, not college. Nothing wrong with that because, hey, wonderful high school basketball I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen wonderful college games, too.
Yes.
I mean, in person. I'm not talking about just on
Yes,
TV.
yes.
But my friend here got to call an NBA game. So
with my good friend Bill Schoening, voice of the look. Bill is one of my best friends in life and in broadcasting, and I told him when I moved down here to Carolina, and I said, "Let me know when you come through Charlotte, and I will stop by and we'll visit, and then I'll let you do your thing." Yeah, Mr. Schoenig's response to me was, quote, "I'll do better than that. You fly by and do stats, and I'll drop you $100. Close quote. You're on. When I drove to Charlotte, and I never got a chance to tell this story on this program. You and I talked after the game. When I left, when I left, and my wife was so excited she wasn't able to go. We had planned to make it a couple day trip, but couldn't. So I had to go a day in advance down to Charlotte, a couple days in advance down to Charlotte. And actually, she did come with me for a couple days, but then she had to go back. When I got to the Spectrum Center, 90 minutes prior to tip, had to drive around a little bit to find where the media parking is, new place. It's just innate for me to find where media parking is. They showed me where it is. One of the guys was so gracious, and I love him for this. And, he came up and he asked me, what's the problem? I said, I'm trying to find where the media parking is because I'm assisting Spurs Radio tonight. And he said, fly around to the other side of the building and I'll get you situated. You just need to put something in your dash that says you're a part of media so you don't get your car towed, and I will get you situated. I flew around to the other side of the building. He got me situated. And I had a piece of paper in the dash that said Spurs Radio. He walked me to the media elevator. I got escorted by a couple people to the media elevator into the arena, and the first person who I ran into was Sean Elliott.
Man. So you ran into a Spurs great.
I ran into a Spurs legend. Forget great. Anybody who remembers the Memorial Day Miracle from 1999 in the Alamo Dome. Yeah. I said, Sean, I paid him so many compliments because I saw Sean play at Arizona. And I fell in love with Sean Elliott's game then at U of A. Knee injury and all. Because remember, he had a significant knee injury during his time at U of A. Hell, Elliott's one of the reasons that one of my favorite college basketball teams is the Arizona Wildcats, because of Sean Elliott. I said, Sean, can I take a selfie with you, please? Because this is a guilty pleasure for me. One of the producers for Spurs Television took my phone and took a picture with me and Sean Elliott. And I said, this is going to be a fun night. I went upstairs to Radio Row, and Spectrum Center is one of 5 arenas where their Radio Row is above the court and not on it. And I think it's going to become a standard that Radio Row goes above the court with how short the scorers table is.
I agree.
But I went upstairs to Media Row, actually, because radio and television were upstairs. Who's the next person I run into? The television voice of the Charlotte Hornets, and Eric Collins. He and I did public league games together. And the next person whose hand I shake, I don't know, Wardell Curry, Stephen Curry's proud papa.
Only one of the great 3-point shooters of all time.
Man, I told him flat out, I loved watching you play and watching you shoot. And he just has this big old smile on his face, and you would think when you folks listen, when you tell these players how you enjoyed them back in the day, it just seems like they blush because it makes them feel appreciated.
And it has to be a thrill knowing that they're hearing a fan account of something they did and how their exploits touched you.
I couldn't I couldn't help it. I said the same to Sean Elliott, reminded him of the Memorial Day Miracle. He blushes and starts laughing. Talked to Dell. I said, love watching you play and love watching your son Stephen and Seth play.
And Seth. Mm-hmm.
And that just produced one big proud papa smile.
Yep.
Did the game with Bill Schoenig. Took some notes on how he puts his broadcast together because he's one of the few that flies solo for a radio call. He is one of the few that flies solo for a radio call, and I understand his preparation because for many, many years I flew solo. When I covered Chicago State, I flew solo, so I completely understand what he has to go through in terms of getting ready for a broadcast. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. So you can add the Spectrum Center covering Spurs Hornets to the list of stadiums I've conquered. I haven't hit the college scene here yet. That's going to change next season. That is going to change. I've seen Reunion Arena in Dallas before they tore it down. I've actually seen NRG. Haven't been in it, but I've seen it. I've seen NRG Stadium.
You'll love it.
Oh, I can't wait.
Great place.
Because look, if the chance ever comes up to call a game at NRG, you're my first call. Like, you bring your family down to Houston, and you come in this booth with me. Period, point blank.
I'll be on the first thing smoking. Man, I can tell you right now. I know wifey will be smiling. After I tell her, the next phone call will be to my father. It's like, yeah, Dad, guess what? I'm going to be in NRG calling the game. What? I know that would light his world up.
I think your dad, if my dad were still here, God rest his soul, I think your dad and my dad would be in one of the suites just chatting it up, watching us do our thing together. Your wife and my wife, same thing. They'll be in one of the suites. Everybody will be in one of the suites while we're doing our thing, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's just it's time to show some love to the folks that don't get it a lot. Women's basketball being at the top of my list. Women's athletics, period, being at the top of my list. Folks like you with your fabulous show on the daily that precedes this one, and also my other show, the Daily BS, and the one that we team up together, the Crossover. And folks, the Crossover is going to be a happening basketball show. You just watch, especially with a certain event in the NBA supposed to be happening on May 8th. More on that on a later date. But it's just time we just showed some love to a lot of people. Women's basketball, women's athletics needs to be one of them. They just need to be one of them, period.
A lot of people, when you talk about women's athletics, especially basketball, it's almost as if they want to talk to you as if it's like a but type of thing.
Yep.
It's like women do play they do play an exciting brand of basketball. They do. And when I honestly give an assessment as to when people say, well, why isn't the women's game as popular professionally?
Yes.
Why isn't it as popular as men's? I always say, look, the professional basketball fan, they are wowed by the athleticism. And the athleticism with the women's game is far different. It's not that it's worse. It's not that it's bad. It's just different.
It is.
Because men are taught to go to the hole hard and dunk. Women are taught to be more fundamentally sound.
Absolutely.
They just are.
Absolutely.
That's just how they're taught. And in a lot of ways, the women's game is better to watch than the men's game because it is more fundamentally sound.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably make the late John Wooden smile at the way women's basketball is played.
It'd make the late Dean Smith smile. Let's go there. Dean Smith would have a smile on his face. John Thompson would have a smile on his face.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Guy V. Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
Sound familiar? Guy V. Lewis will be smiling from ear to ear, from one side of Houston to the other. Same reason.
Mm-hmm. So, so when I hear guys say, well, I can't watch women's basketball because I need to see one dunk. Well, okay, they do have some women who do dunk.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm not gonna watch it anyway.
I'll watch it,
dude.
I'll watch it.
You're missing out on the fact that basketball is really supposed to be played the way women do it.
Yes,
it's actually supposed to be played that way. That is how basketball is supposed to be played. And I'm not saying this to blow smoke. I'm saying it because I got a chance to watch I wasn't converted as a women's basketball watcher because I saw it in the mid 80s and late 80s. I wasn't converted until the mid 90s when the WNBA was born, and I got a chance to see the Houston Comets. And then after, when I saw the other teams tune in WNBA at the time, I was like, you know what? This is something else. I like this. It's much different. It's not the penetration fest.
No,
it's
a fundamentally sound game. It's a fundamentally sound game. And I actually heard this argument that women's athletics will not get the same kind of love and the same kind of financial support that men's athletics do in colleges because people don't want to watch it. Well, I have two responses. A, you're missing out. And B, that's a load of baloney. That's a load of baloney.
Very much so. Very much so. Very much so. I mean, the reason why I say that it is not that way for college women's athletics, because it's a shame that it's that way for professional realm.
Yes.
And because those women get grossly underpaid.
Grossly.
And I say the union does them horrible. The union does them as horrible as the NFL union does.
Yes. Yes.
But that's what I'm talking about.
Look, and that's you exactly knew where I was going. That's a conversation for another time before the 2020 season kicks off. We have to have that. We have to have that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. But you mean to tell me that the interest in just in the college realm, you mean to tell me the interest isn't there? I live in a state where the greatest coach, not greatest women's coach, not greatest basketball coach, the greatest coach that ever existed in this state was Pat
Summitt.
The greatest Tennessee coach of any athletics whatsoever.
Who has the floor name? Who has the floor named after her? By the way, folks.
Yes, the floor is named after her. Yes.
Yep.
The floor with the men's game.
Yes.
is played as well.
Yep.
Is named after her.
Yep.
And rightfully and deservedly so.
Right. Let's see. Pat Summitt, Gino Auriemma, Kay Yow.
Wonderful guy.
North Carolina.
Yes.
Kay Yow, North Carolina State. Okay. The one who just hung Muffet McGraw. Muffet McGraw. Who just said, I'm calling it a career. Muffet McGraw put Notre Dame women's basketball on the map. And you mentioned another one, C. Vivian Stringer. You mean to tell me they don't deserve the same kind of love that the men do? Baloney.
And then when they argue the point that someone like a Becky Hammon, who's on the precipice of becoming an NBA head coach, shouldn't, simply because she's going to be a coach. Okay, that is a bunch of crap. Not her to not be on the sideline, but for her to be argued that she shouldn't be. She has every right to be.
I've
every
always
right to be on the sideline.
I've always thought like this, and this has been true since I was a child. If you can do the job, you deserve the job, man
Yeah.
or woman. If you can do
Exactly.
the job, you deserve the job. One of my favorite women's basketball announcers, or one of my favorite female announcers, Beth Mowens, had the pleasure of meeting her in Chicago. Just as down to earth as any of the others I've met over the years. I'd love to team up with her and do a game. I'll just sit back, observe, and learn. Because even though I got many years in the game, there are so many different personalities in the broadcast game. You know this as well as I. There are so many different personalities in the broadcast game that the women just need to be shown love the same way the men do. And I already mentioned an underrated voice. I already mentioned an underrated voice who did work for CBS for many years, Frank Lieber, whose life was unfortunately taken in '84 due to diabetes.
Yeah.
Which shocked me and also woke me up. It also woke me up.
Yeah. It's past time. It's past time.
Yes.
That
God,
women's
yes.
athletics in general and women's basketball in particular, it needs to be put front and center.
And not just
it
on
does.
and not just on the 4-letter network either.
No.
All right. If you want me to go all the way there, and you already know my disdain with that 4-letter network, let's go all the way there. Not just on the 4-letter network either. Should women's athletics be showcased? Why don't you do it like the way they do it back in the mid-'90s, and you televise the women's Final Four, and you put 3 letters behind it, and those 3 letters are CBS.
And you mean to tell me that they can't garner revenue from that game? From the game itself? Man.
Imagine CBS
People
doing
better
the
wake
women's
up.
Final Four in Chicago, which is the right move, by the way. Which is definitely the right move. You bring in some of the best from the 4-letter network that call games there and say, hey, we'll give you a 3-day contract and we'll pay you a bunch of bucks to put these women on the map. And I had a chance to cover the beginning of the career of one of the best women's basketball players I've ever seen play. Does the name Elena Deladon mean anything to you?
Only the best women's game player today.
I mean, I'll give you one other name. Does the name Candace Parker mean anything to you? Saw her at Naperville Central, saw her at Tennessee, had a chance to. I'm going to get Candace Parker on this program. I'm going to get Elena Deladon on this program. In fact, what I'm going to do, and my wife's going to help me compose a press release about this program, your program, everything the folks are doing at RTF Sports and the other networks that syndicate this particular show, and my production company, Snowman Digital Media. We're going to show some love to those ladies. I'll spearhead this. I'll spearhead this.
Do. Yeah, I mean, look, just between just those two, Deladon and Candace Parker. I mean, the game is in great shape.
The game's
there's just no
excuse.
It's just no excuse for them to not have the proper focus.
Right. And matter of fact, let's go back to its, if you want to call them meager beginnings of the WNBA, so be it. But there was a young lady by the name of Cynthia Cooper who I loved watching.
Man, the best women's basketball player I've ever laid eyes on, and to me, one of the greatest basketball players I've ever seen.
I agree with that.
Do it.
You want a fantasy 3-point contest? Cynthia Cooper, Stephen Curry.
Look, that woman has forgotten more basketball than any of us will ever know. That is how good She is.
Yep.
And I bet now, and she's like in her 50s now. I bet now she could probably destroy half of the NBA
Yep.
now.
Yeah. With her eyes closed. and a little love for she's long since departed, Kim Peratt, Cynthia Cooper's teammate.
Yeah, I miss her. Yeah.
I think it was brain cancer that took her life. I wonder
It was.
It was
It
brain
was.
cancer. And every time, and I remember Cynthia Cooper showing love to Kim Peratt. Every time she made a basket, she held up the number 10. She signaled the number 10 every time. Rebecca Lobo, Tina Thompson. How about Teresa Weatherspoon, one of the WNBA pioneers? Lisa Leslie, another WNBA pioneer.
Man.
How about Van Chancellor?
Great guy. Met him. Great guy.
How about Van Chancellor?
That guy knows his basketball. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great guy.
Yep.
Knows the game, and is one of the most personal people you'll ever know.
Indeed.
Man, great gentleman.
And Tamika Catchings, who I am pining to get on this program as soon as possible, a Hall of Famer.
Oh man!
And I love Tamika. I love watching Tamika Catchings play, and she's very, very personable. I had so many off the court conversations with her, and now I want to get her on this program. So yeah, if it sounds like I'm putting some plans in place, you better believe it.
The questions I would ask her. Wow.
You and I both, man. You and I both. You know, and all she's done for the Indiana Fever, just to enhance the fact that Indianapolis is a basketball town. There are two people that has made Indianapolis a basketball town since the 80s. Reggie Miller and Tamika Catchings.
Yeah, they can write their own ticket in Indianapolis.
They could do anything. They could do anything they want in Indy. It's like you said, they can write their own ticket with no problem.
No problem whatsoever.
None. I mean, you mean to tell? We all know the ticket Michael Jordan can write for the city of Chicago. Him, Scottie Pippen, Phil Jackson, all those guys. Steve Kerr, who's a Warriors coach. Steve Kerr, John Paxson. Okay, and what do Paxson and Kerr have in common? A championship-winning shot, 4 years apart. 1993 for Pax, 1997 for Kerr. And again, I'm reminded of, I believe it was Matt Guokas, 1997, after Kerr hit that championship winner. Matt Guokas said, and I'll borrow from you, quote, well, the question was, would Stockton come to double Michael Jordan? Stockton came, Steve Kerr, reminiscent of John Paxson in 93. Close quote.
Talk about an underrated color guy.
Yes. Who knew the game.
Matt Guokas was an underrated color guy. Yes, and he knew the game very well.
And here's something that a lot of Philadelphia folks know, and and I know this because my first favorite team was the 76ers. You know who he studied under? Billy Cunningham.
Billy Cunningham. Talk about an underrated coach and brilliant basketball mind.
Billy Cunningham.
I mean, this guy with the team that he had, he brought the Sixers to 3 championships in 4 years. Well, three finals in 4 years.
3 world championship appearances. Finally got it in 83.
In 83. Mm-hmm.
In the Forum. Okay, and this is where I take my obligatory shot at LeBron James. You know how Julius Erving and LeBron James are separated from each other? Folks, Julius Erving did something LeBron has not done. That's clinch a world championship with something as fundamental we like to call a jump shot. And you know, I know the folks at the Bron Sexers are going to come out and they go, well, what about 2013? Yeah, Ray Allen saved that.
Oh, gosh.
Ray Allen saved that with a fundamental thing we like to call a jump shot.
Speaking of fundamental thing that we would like to call a jump shot and saving, folks, people actually had the audacity, the temerity, the unmitigated gall to put forth that Kerr shot and say, so you mean to tell me you talk about Kyrie and Ray Allen saving LeBron, but Steve Kerr didn't save Michael Jordan? To which I responded, okay, yeah, that was a championship-winning shot, but correct me if I'm wrong. When Kerr took the shot, the Bulls were up 3 games to 2, not down 3 games to 2. They were up.
Yep, they were up 3 games to 2.
Which means Kerr hits the shot, they win. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was a guy who had the number 2 and 3 who set up that earlier with the penetration, and he made it on a shot. But he was the guy who made the assist, right? So
yep, he was the guy who trusted Steve Kerr. This is something, okay, since we're going there, this is something LeBron does not do. Listen, this is something LeBron does not do. And I've said this on this program. LeBron doesn't trust his teammates. Michael Jordan did.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan trusted his teammates because anybody who saw the behind the scenes, Michael looked right at Steve Kerr, didn't take his eyes off him, and he started his sentence by saying, if Stockton comes off, and Steve Kerr finished it, said, I'll be ready.
I'm ready. Mm-hmm.
You think Michael and Steve Kerr weren't in sync?
Right. So apparently this was framed as Jordan was saved by someone else. I figured you would get a huge kick out of that because I did too. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, yeah, go back and study, please.
Which they don't. You know that as well as I do, which they don't.
Yeah. I'm like, Jordan set that up earlier in the game.
Jordan set that up by he set that up by trusting him.
Yeah, he trusted Kerr, and he knew Stockton would double. So, yeah. I'm like, good Lord, people don't study basketball. But I digress.
They really don't study basketball. They really don't study basketball. Here's something that, you know, it gets on my nerves when people say, you know, Mark Jackson deserves a shot at a coach. He had one.
Mm-hmm.
He blew it.
And he was good, but
Steve Kerr pushed the right buttons. Okay, let's just and here's let's bring this into play. You want to go there? Let's go there. You know, people tried to make that a race issue. I know you've heard the rumblings when it came to Mark Jackson versus Steve Kerr.
They still do. 6 years later, they still think it's a race thing.
Yes.
But, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the example that Mark Jackson displayed when he wasn't going to state and he got summarily fired, although his team improved year to year, he forgot to do something called managing up. Now, you can manage down and treat your players fine, but if you're going to treat the organization who hired you like garbage,
you deserve to go.
You're going to end up
on the unemployment line.
You're going to end up on the unemployment line and possibly in the garbage. That's exactly what happened to Mark Jackson.
Yep, and that's why he'll never get another. That's why he will never get another shot at a coaching job. And this is not to slight Mark Jackson as a coach.
No,
it's to slight.
I like the guy.
Look, Mark Jackson would make a fantastic coach if he kept his nose out of other people's business.
Yeah, I like the guy. I like the guy as a coach. I like the guy as a definitely. I like the guy as a color commentator.
Right.
And he was a wonderful coach. But you're the head coach. You got to make sure that everyone is well taken care of.
Yep.
And when you don't do that, you see what happens. And unfortunately, he got a chance to now be on the front row seat, outside looking in, at the team he helped construct be the power of the league the following 5 years. And
there will be more from the Warriors. There will be more from the Warriors, folks. Trust me, there will be more from the Warriors in the next couple of years. Staying on Mark Jackson, people still make it a race issue to this day, him versus Steve Kerr, and people tend to forget the first time Mark Jackson came back to Oracle Arena with the ABC announced team, they gave him a standing ovation.
Mm-hmm.
They loved him. They gave him a standing ovation.
Yeah.
But there's one move that Steve Kerr made that Mark Jackson wouldn't make. Steve Kerr told Andre Iguodala, I need you to come off the bench.
Smart move.
And, oh, by the way, folks, it worked.
Smart move. He learned that from Popovich when he was a Spur.
Yep.
And he got a chance to see, to me, one of the best six men to ever do it in Manu Ginobili. Who, let's be completely forthright, the dude is so talented he could have started.
Easy.
But he volunteered to be the sixth man.
Mm-hmm.
So Kerr, seeing that, studying from the greats, one is Popovich, of course, the other is Phil Jackson.
Yep.
That was a smart move. That was a smart move to put a guy who was well versed in being a starter, who can give you points and give you defense in Iguodala's case.
Yeah.
Without blinking, without prodding, without even asking.
Nope.
Well, I mean, that was a no-brainer. That was a good decision. Yeah.
And the smartest decision Steve Kerr made to bring Andre off the bench. And
he
by
gets
the way,
awarded by being Finals MVP the very year he gets moved to the sixth man.
Yeah, and by the way, Bronzexuals, and I'm going to hand you a layup before we hand this thing off to a break because Dr. K is yelling in my ear, although she's laughing at the same time. I'll hand you this for the Bronzexual confessions. Didn't Andre Iguodala lock up LeBron in every World Championship series they played?
Okay, well, we already know Bronzexuals will come back and say, well, he almost averaged triple-double in 2015.
Yep.
I can't remember if it was 2017 or 2018. He came close to, if not doing so, in either one of those years. And then they would say, well, he blocked his shot in 2016. But the thing I have to say about that is we can tout about the wonderful stats that a guy puts up, but the end result is rings. And if you want an example of this, and I always ask Bronzexual this, I was like, okay, what do you think about one Jerry West? And the reason why I ask that is Jerry West also has 9 NBA Finals / World Championship Series appearances.
Yep.
Now, unlike LeBron, West was 1-8.
Mm-hmm.
So, and every one that he lost to, save for 2, were to the Celtics.
Yes.
And the other 2 were to the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
So I will put this to the floor for any Bronzexuals. You don't hype this guy to be the greatest of all time, yet he went to 9 appearances in the Ultimate Series.
Yep.
Why should we do the same thing with LeBron James? Because not only does he have 9 appearances in the finals along with West, but West averages 27, 6, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron, 27, 7, and 7. So you mean to tell me that LeBron is the greatest of all time because he averages 1 assist and 1 rebound a game in a career more than Jerry West?
Jerry West, right.
But you don't hype him the same as you do LeBron.
And they never will. And they never
will.
They never will.
Never will.
You know, and Jerry West faced some superior teams Okay.
Yes.
Let me say that again. The one common denominator between LeBron and Jerry West, they faced some superior teams, and teams always win out. In case you haven't noticed.
Every time. Yeah.
In case you haven't noticed, teams always win out. I mean, Jerry West had to face the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron had to face the Warriors.
Yeah.
Get the parallel there, folks?
Mm-hmm. And when it wasn't them, LeBron faced the Spurs.
Yep.
And West faced the Knicks. So
there you go. I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't want to hear it. And the one time he didn't face the Spurs, one time that LeBron didn't face either the Spurs nor the Warriors, he faced Oklahoma City. The hell's Oklahoma City doing in this?
And it would have been the Spurs that year had it not been for Oklahoma City catching lightning in the bottle that year and bouncing them in the West Conference Finals.
Yep.
Yep.
I got to go to a break. But Cole Johnson joining me here to kick off the show, and it's a hell of a kickoff, folks. You'll hear this on the podcast. Trust me, you'll hear this a few times over. Thanks a lot, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the time, man. I appreciate it as always.
I got some more stuff after I catch my breath. Back in a flash.
You're tuned in to the Daily BS. Sports and culture combined into one.
The one and only Mike Debate from Full Press Coverage joins me. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well, my friend. Thank you so much for having me on your show this morning and talking a little NFL draft and the aftermath of what was an interesting weekend in the NFL. Interesting to say the least. Let's dive right in. Big trade happened between the Redskins and the 49ers. First of all, I say a happy retirement to one Joe Staley, the longtime left tackle of the 49ers who graced the number 74 a la Steve Wallace. And he's riding off into the sunset after playing 2 Super Bowls. But then Trent Williams is now welcome to San Francisco. You talk about a move. They get a 7-time Pro Bowler to replace a 6-time Pro Bowler. So that position is taken care of. And we all know who they selected with the 13th pick. The floor is yours, Mike.
Absolutely. And with the 13th pick, we called this a couple of weeks ago, and you really called it before even I did, and that Javon Kinlaw would be the selection at number 13, 14 for the San Francisco 49ers. And to me, this pick made so much sense. I saw a lot of vitriol being thrown at it over the weekend about, value, and, they drafted him too high. And believe me, being up here in New England, I know all about vitriol being thrown at picks that are thrown at guys for, allegedly taking someone too high. In there.
Right.
Look, San Francisco used the 14th pick on Javon Kinlaw. To me, he's a massive athlete, a singular athlete. I believe he's going to replace DeForest Buckner quite well. I really like the fit that he has in San Francisco. I don't really care about what pundits are going to say about certain fits and where you should take this guy and, he should be, he's a second rounder or he's a late first rounder. You can put a draft grade all you want on people. What matters is the team that takes him. And obviously they felt that he was worth that selection. And I think San Francisco is going to, do very well with that and go quite nicely along with it. Then they trade up from 31 to 25. They take Brandon Ayuk. Again, another selection that a lot of people were scratching their heads about. I don't understand why. I think Ayuk develops. He's very, very big, great impact player after the catch. I think he fits very nicely in a Kyle Shanahan's offense. I think the cost to move up 6 spots was a wash. I really do. Some people might think it was too expensive, but I like San Francisco's aggressiveness in this draft. They obviously put targets on these people, and they pulled the trigger on them. And I think it's going to reap some benefits for them. And I think they're really going to end up doing well.
They're going to do very, very well, especially with the pieces that they have in place. You and I have talked very much about Javon Kinlaw. And, people said, we should get the 49ers should get receivers to replace Emmanuel Sanders. Look, this was a receiver deep draft, very, very deep with receivers. The 49ers had their pick. Of course, the talk was CeeDee Lamb. But I like the way that they snatched Brandon Ayuk. And then on Saturday, I love the way that they snatched Jauan Jennings out of Tennessee.
I love the way they snatched Jauan Jennings. Again, another high-impact player that can make a real difference on this team. And I love the way he fits in with the culture and with the ability for the 49ers to be able to move forward. One pick that I think I was really going to pay dividends for them alongside a guy like George Kittle, and that's Charlie Warner in the 6th round. Very good blocker, tremendous tight end, somebody that I had looked at as a possibility for the Patriots. That was a big position of need for them going into this draft. I really believe that he's a better receiver than he's gotten the opportunity to show when he was at Georgia, and I think he's going to be a nice fit in this offense, especially alongside a guy like Kittle. So I love the Warner pick. I do love the Jennings pick. Again, I think San Francisco, top to bottom, had a very good draft, and I can't understand why some people are not as high on it as I've been. I like what they did in just about every aspect of the other choices that they made.
One thing I said to you over the course of the weekend, the 49ers are still playing chess while the rest of the NFC is playing checkers, filling out their immediate need, yes. But if you look at the 49ers and how they have been built, especially since John Lynch took over as GM and Kyle Shanahan took over as the coach, they're not just building for now. They're building for the long term.
Yeah, they really are building for the long term. And I think a pick like this, with Kinlaw in mind, I think, going with Ayuk in the latter part of the first round. And then as you saw how the draft progressed for them, this is a team that is not making any apologies for contending right now. They're going to do that. That's their primary focus. But the players that they picked up are going to allow them to remain in contention for quite some time. San Francisco got a lot better this weekend, and I really think a lot of teams in the NFC need to take note of that, especially as we move toward the 2020 season beginning.
I want y'all to keep an eye on this name out of Washington. He was signed by the 49ers as an undrafted free agent, Salvon Ahmed. The 49ers sent Matt Breida to Miami for a couple of picks. They also sent Marquise Goodwin packing. He's off to Philadelphia. And, some of 49er fans I spoke to got worried. Then we selected Javon Jennings. But keep your eye on this fellow. Salvon Ahmed could become another in the long line of jackknife running backs that the 49ers made famous.
That is such a perfect way to describe him. And you turned me on to him a little bit last night, and I did my due diligence on him a little today. I actually really like this pickup as an undrafted free agent. You mentioned the type of a jackknife running back. I think that's such an apropos term because he does. He's the type of guy that can run north to south. He can go east to west if he needs to. If he needs to pick up yardage, he is very capable of being able to go horizontal before he goes lateral. I like this kid for them. I think he's going to bring them a lot. Look, Breida was one of those types of workhorse backs that I don't know if he ever really necessarily got a chance to, fall into his own last year. I think he was overshadowed a little bit, but there's still a lot left in the tank for him. I like that if he's going to go somewhere, he's going to Miami, going to play under a system under Brian Flores, who knows how to utilize those type of backs that may not always make the flashy play, but they're always going to be there for the handoff, and they're always going to give you 110%. So good landing spot for Breida going to Miami, but I really like this pickup for San Francisco, and he's someone definitely I'm going to keep a sharp eye on in training camps. And as the roster building progresses, I think this could get very interesting in San Francisco.
Absolutely. Salvon Ahmed will be a perfect complement for that running tandem, and it's going to be another triple play of running backs. Mostert, I believe, will begin as the starter. Tevin Coleman, of course, will be beside him. Juszczyk, your fullback. Werner can work as the H-back, the tight end you talked about out of Georgia. Salvon Ahmed is going to make some noise in San Francisco. I just really feel it. Keep your eyes on him. I want to look at the number 6 pick by the Chargers. Justin Herbert out of Oregon. There's pushback either way. You either love the pick or you hate the pick. It was time for the Chargers, I think, to move on from Phillip Rivers, and you want to get someone that could get acclimated in that system. And we won't know the answers until about 8 games down the road, but I have a sneaking suspicion the Chargers made the right call.
I believe they did, especially for the way that they're looking to move forward. I think Herbert brings a maturity. I think he brings a sure-handedness, and I think he brings stability to the position. No one is a bigger fan of the type of potential that a quarterback can have of Tua Tagovailoa than myself. I like his fit in Miami. Again, I know Brian Flores very well. I know his system. I know his philosophy, and I think Tua can thrive there. But I think the Chargers also recognize that a quarterback, a head coach that has a quarterback run tandem in mind, the way Anthony Lynn does, realizes that Justin Herbert is going to be the better choice long term there. I really do like the pick for them. I think Herbert has a maturity. I think he has the arm, the intangibles, everything you need to be able to succeed, especially knowing that he's going to come in and replace a legendary quarterback for the Chargers for a number of years in Phillip Rivers. That's not easy to do, and I think Herbert is better equipped to do that in L.A. But the Chargers move that I really liked over the weekend was jumping back into the first round, picking up Kenneth Murray, who's a guy that I had my eye on for the Patriots. Prototypical linebacker, gives you that ability, has range, has power, really is a big asset against the run. If there's one area of the Chargers defense that I think struggled a little bit, it was on run defense. Their pass rush is still extremely formidable when you take a look at Ingram and Bosa on either side, one of the best pass rush combinations in the NFL. So I think right now, I like their draft. I know a lot of people are kind of wishy-washy on it. There are some that will be wait and see. But ultimately, at the top of the line, I think they made the right move by going with Justin Herbert.
Let's go back toward the top of the draft and look at the number 2 pick, Chase Young, going to the Washington Redskins. Identity piece indeed, especially for a Redskins defense that broke more than they bent.
Yeah, they definitely did. And look, this was the right move by Washington. He is a superstar pass rusher in the making. If you want to talk about a player that can revolutionize a defense, Chase Young is the guy. He is right there in terms of quality. I think that he's got all the intangibles to be able to anchor this defense for a number of years to come. So I really like this pick. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone. I don't think there was any one that expected them to go in a different direction. Once you knew that Joe Burrow was off the table at pick number 1, Chase Young was a logical fit for the second pick for Washington, and they definitely made the right move. This kid has, again, superstar written all over him, and he's an explosive player. And I just think he's going to be a great player on this defense for a number of years.
Speaking of an explosive player, let's go to Arizona. Isaiah Simmons lands in their lap out of Clemson. And I'll tell you what, he's going to make an impact very quickly.
Simmons is probably one of the more, and I know I'm going to raise a little eyebrow when I say this, but I think he was actually one of the more underrated players in this draft. I think he might have been a higher pick than number 8. Very, very good for the Arizona Cardinals that he slipped to them. At this point, I think he gives the Cardinals that type of versatile defender that they've been lacking. He can play multiple spots. He's not a safety. He's not a linebacker. He's really, I think, both, if you take a look at it. He's got the ability to come up. He can play in a 3-4 and a 4-3 set. He's one of those types of players that, again, that can change the complexity of a defense. And Arizona is explosive on offense. They need defensive youth and they need defensive stability. Simmons provides it both. I really like this pick for them, and I think he's going to a very good spot where he can shine.
Speaking of wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb goes to the Dallas Cowboys at number 17. They pick up another offensive weapon, but looking at the other side of the coin, there's an offensive line they didn't address, and there's some defensive issues they didn't address.
Yeah, I think that, to me, Dallas had bigger needs. But when you see a talent like CeeDee Lamb available, it's very difficult to pass him up. And I was very surprised that it took as long as it did for him to come off the board. I really think that he's got, a lot of potential, and I think he's going to be a very good wide receiver in this league. So we'll see if he can get into a crowded and very high-octane offense in Dallas right now. K'Lavon Chaisson, I think, was a good pick for them for defensive purposes. I really like his game and what he's going to be able to bring to the table. Trevon Diggs at quarterback is another guy that a lot of people were pretty high on. I think he slipped a little bit more than I thought he was going to. To me, he's going to end up playing dividends in that secondary. Neville Gallimore as a defensive tackle is someone that can provide a big body up front. Dallas had a little trouble defending against the run last year, so he should help out a little bit. So they did address some needs, but again, they had bigger needs at the top of the shelf, and it was a little surprising to me that they went in the direction that they did. But I guess they went for the most talent, and it's hard to argue. Lamb is one of the best wide receivers in this class. To the
AFC South, and we look at the Indianapolis Colts and their second-round pick, wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. out of USC. You want to make an offense more potent? 1, they're going to stay healthy with Phillip Rivers, and 2, you add a talent like this.
Yeah, I mean, Pittman Jr. to me is another guy that I think should have gotten a lot more play in this draft than he did. I was surprised that he wasn't ranked as high as he was, slipped a little bit. But again, this is a guy who's a tremendous route runner, one of the more cerebral and one of the more dedicated route runners in this draft. I really like his intangibles. He's got a quick step. He stutters a little bit. I think he'll need to work a little bit with some of the receivers that they have in Indianapolis to shore that up. But they had a need there at this position, and I think he's going to pay dividends for them. This was a great pickup for them. And again, it's hard to argue with their picks from top to bottom. Jacob Eason, I think, is going to be a guy that can really help out learn a lot from Phillip Rivers. Eason has a relative cannon for an arm. Again, a guy that I scouted a little bit for the Patriots, thought he might be a nice fit in Foxborough. There is some decision-making and some intangibles that he needs to work on. He's going to learn from one of the best. Phillip Rivers has done this job well for a number of years. Don't let the interceptions that he threw last year fool you. There's still a little bit left in the tank with Phillip. I think a lot of that was because of the situation he was in, a lot of the flux of the offense, the way they ran it in Los Angeles, but you saw some of the potential that he had. So learning under him, I think, is going to be a good learning experience. I like what Indianapolis did over the weekend, and I think they got a lot better this weekend as well.
I really think they got a lot better, too. And another side note, speaking of Phillip Rivers, he's now being coached by a quarterback in Frank Reich. And you want to talk about a guy that's had some success. He had some success with Andrew Luck. Jacoby Brissett was the starter for the most part. Just a lot of injuries at the quarterback positions. Now you get someone stable in Phillip Rivers, and then you got your future in Jacob Eason.
Absolutely. And again, I mean, you look at a runner like Marlon Mack, and you take a look at, receivers like T.Y. and the guys that they have on staff that are going to be able to nurture this team and move this team going forward. They really had, I think, one of the toughest, gut punches that you can get as a team last year when Andrew Luck decides to walk away in the midst of training camp and you weren't prepared for it. Jacoby Brissett came in, did an admirable job. I think it's probably a sign that he's not the answer to their quarterback problems. I do expect him to be moved. And I think ultimately it'll be good for both sides to be able to start fresh. But again, I love the pick of Pittman, and I really was impressed by them going with Eason. I think this is going to be a perfect opportunity for Eason to learn under arguably a future Hall of Famer, and someone that has played in a number of wartime situations like a guy like Phillip Rivers.
To the NFC North, and we look at the Chicago Bears. The Bears pick up a tight end in Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame. I love this pick for several reasons. Anybody who is familiar with the Monsters of the Midway on offense, they always had a tight end. If you go back to 1985, you remember Emory Moorhead, Desmond Clark from 2006. They both made Super Bowl appearances. You get this young fellow in the offense, and you get some continuity on offense, and look out, the Bears may be roaring again.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, the Bears had 10 tight ends on staff. Why would they go with Cole Kmet? Because he was the best one available. And I think just because you have a wealth of numbers at a position doesn't necessarily mean that you're happy with the depth at the position. And if you have the ability to pick up a guy like Kmet, who arguably was, I think, the most talented and the best complete tight end in this draft, you take that opportunity. And kudos to the Chicago Bears for doing that. You mentioned the Bears draft as a whole. One pick that I think I would keep an eye on if I'm a Bears fan, 5th rounder, Travis Gibson. I like this pick for them. I think he has value as that long type of linebacker that can play the run, do enough as a pass rusher. You put him in there in a defense that already has guys like Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack. This is an opportunity for him to really grow into a true force on that defense. Keep an eye on him, Bears fans. I think he could be the sleeper in that defense that a lot of people have been looking for. That was a pick that really, really raised my eye. I like him a lot with that.
Going back to the 49ers, the defending NFC champs, also in the 5th round, Colton McKivitz, they pick up out of the tackle out of West Virginia. The 49ers suffered a lot of injuries, and most of them came along the offensive line. You get Trent Williams back. You expect Weston Richburg to come back healthy, the free agent they signed from the Giants. And then you get this young fella who was a bully up front. And yes, he played in the Big 12. But every football team who has been good, no matter what conference you're playing in college, you got to be a bully up front. And the 49ers got one.
They truly did. And again, offensive skill positions may get the headlines, but to me, the battles of a championship football team are won on the lines. And I think that's what you see with a lot of these players and a lot of these great teams that know building depth at that position is so important. Again, I love that pick, and I think that it was a smart pick by the 49ers. You look at teams like, and I'll keep coming back to the Patriots, but a lot of people are maligning their draft, and especially their day 3 selections and their day 2 selections, which are really getting panned. but the Patriots know the value of building an offensive line better than anyone. Michael Onwenu, Justin Herron, these are picks that not a lot of people thought were necessary picks, but they're going to build that offensive line, and they're going to strengthen an offensive line to allow them to continue and compete. This is something that San Francisco knew last year. Suffered a lot of injury, still came within an eyelash of winning the Super Bowl. You add quality youth depth at the position, which they did with this pick. I like it a lot. And again, it builds into that character. It builds into that philosophy that Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, and the Brain Trust over in San Francisco are building. That's how you win championships. Strengthen, solidify the offensive line. Give that running attack an opportunity to be able to run through freely. Give Jimmy Garoppolo some time in the pocket. It's going to be an exciting offense to watch this year, even though they did suffer. Obviously you mentioned the loss of Goodwin. You mentioned, the loss of Breda. There's still a lot of talent there. Deebo Samuel, Jalen Hurd, guys that we've discussed. Again, I feel like Brandon Ayuk coming in and being able to give them, pop and a little bit of yards after the catch potential when it comes to the wide receiver position. And again, they boast the best tight end in the league. I say that even with Rob Gronkowski coming back to Tampa Bay. He's 1 year removed from playing the last time. And the last time that he was on the field, he was not quite the Gronk of old. He's still going to be good, folks. He's still going to give Tampa Bay a formidable, weapon. But again, I still think if you're looking at the top tight end, top to bottom in this league, you have to look at George Kittle. To me, he's the most complete package.
He is the most complete package, and the 49ers are, once again, the most complete team. Let's stay in the NFC West. Let's stay with San Francisco. You and I have talked about this for the better part of a month. How are they going to replace DeForest Buckner? In walks Javon Kinlaw, and he is perfect. You can move him around. You can move Bosa around. You can switch those ends, keep the inside the way that it is. But Javon Kinlaw is an absolute bully up front, and he's going to terrorize those offensive lines in the NFC West.
He really is. And I was a little bit surprised. I was a little more surprised that a guy like Kinlaw didn't get as much, I don't want to say as much notoriety, because he did get notoriety, but I really was surprised that this pick was panned as heavily as it was. Look, again, the type of defender that can block out. He can move laterally. He's got good fluid movement when he has to move laterally. But when he's ready to go and he's ready to move forward, he's got that extra spring in his step that allows him to be able to beat guys to the punch. He's got power. He's got size. He's got speed. I think this was a great pick for San Francisco, and he really fills the shoes of a guy like Buckner. He's not going to fill them completely and immediately right away, but he still provides the opportunity to be able to fit into this system, and I think sooner rather than later. I'd be really, really surprised if he's not either a full-time starter on this team right off the bat or a serious contributor for this team. You're going to hear his name a lot this year in San Francisco, and rightfully so. I think he's fitting into a great system.
To the NFC South in Carolina, they start with Derek Brown, defensive tackle out of Auburn, to defend some defensive needs with that team.
Yeah, Carolina was another team that a lot of people were pretty high on their draft. And look, it's hard to argue the result. I think that when you look at what they were able to do, bring in a guy like Derek Brown, dominant lineman. He can move blockers around with ease. We saw him do it several times in college. I think he's going to be able to do it. Give Teddy Bridgewater a little bit of help on in that team as well on the defensive side of the ball. I like how they brought in a guy like Yader Gross-Matos, who I know a lot of people had some things to say about him. I was actually very high on Gross-Matos, believe it or not. Another player that I had scouted a little bit for the Patriots, that type of linebacker that can come in, physical, athletic, can really help out on the edge. To me, I think he has the ability to get after the quarterback. Really like what I saw from him out of Penn State. Jeremy Chin, to me, is another good pickup for this team. Big, fast, explosive safety, built like a Greek god. I don't know if anybody saw like the combine photos when it came to this kid. He's he's big, he's physical, and he's going to be a hit in that backfield, because he's going to be able to give you that speed and athleticism that I think they're going to need. But look, there's a lot. They really went heavily on defense. There's no question about it. All defense on this. Troy Pride Jr., I think, was a good pickup for them at cornerback. I think he's going to help in that secondary. To me, there's a lot of good players here that I think they really have the ability to be able to move forward. And I like Kenny Robinson out of the XFL as well. I like him getting a shot in this team. It's going to be a fun team to watch this year, Carolina. I think a lot of people are sleeping on them because of New Orleans, Tampa Bay, and even Atlanta getting a little bit more of the headlines. Watch out for Carolina. That's going to be a fun team.
Last but not least, we'll stay in the NFC South. Tristan Wirfs goes to Tampa because they have to protect arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game.
Wirfs definitely was a great pick. I loved what Tampa Bay did this weekend. I really and truly did. They had needs. They identified those needs, and they went with them. Look, you can argue that Tampa Bay was a winner before they even started the first, draft. Picking up Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski in the same offseason is pretty formidable. And I mean, they're really, that's an upgrade like you can't imagine. Yeah, it cost them a fourth round pick, but I mean, look, you bring in two of the greatest to ever play. They're each respective positions, and it's hard to argue. But Wirfs arguably is one of the best offensive linemen in this draft class. I think he will end up being just that. He's the type of guy that can provide such stability on that offensive line. Tom Brady had to be loving that pick, and I'm sure that patented grin that Tom has was grinning from ear to ear when they made that selection. But look, they weren't done there. Antoine Winfield Jr. was a huge pickup. Great safety, another guy that has the ability to really make a name for himself this year. I think he's got a great chance to make some big plays. We saw him do it at Minnesota. I really like the way he's coming into this team. I like, obviously, I think Tyler Johnson coming in at wide receiver, giving them another option in what's already a loaded wide receiver core in Tampa Bay. I like their draft. They were one of the big winners of this weekend to me because I think they had check boxes next to all of their needs, and I think they checked them all on over the weekend.
Yes, they certainly did. We got more on this draft breakdown throughout the coming weeks. We'll give you a division by division, team by team breakdown beginning next week. That's Mike DeBate, the man, one of the men in charge of full press coverage and my NFL insider here on the program. Love having him. Love talking some football. Thanks a lot, my friend. Truly appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for having me. Take care. Have a great week, and I look forward to coming back and doing it again real soon.
That'll do it for this edition of the Daily BS. I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you to my wonderful guests, and I want to thank you, the wonderful fans that have tuned in the region, across the nation, and around the world. Want to sponsor this here program? Drop an email to snowmandigitalmedia@gmail.com. That's snowmandigitalmedia@gmail.com. And also, you can find us on snowmandigitalmedia.com for a great replay of this show. And don't forget, the podcast version thereof is available immediately after I get the heck out of here, which I'm about to do right now. Have a great afternoon. God bless. Remember to make your next move your best move. And always remember, if your dreams don't scare you, then they are not big enough. Dream big, do bigger. I am, and I hope you all are too. Until tomorrow, when I'm back at you again with another edition of the Daily BS, I'm signing off until 22 hours from now. So long, everybody.